To this day, Golden Freddy is still the most talked about animatronic throughout all of FNaF. This is despite the fact that he hasn't shown up in an actual game for 7 entire years at this point. But in his last appearance, he did one of the most impactful things of the entire series, creating a personalized hell for William Afton to suffer in forevermore. And by forever, I do mean forever. UCN is still ongoing, and Cassidy is still the one orchestrating it. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Before going any further into this video, I should probably tell you that this is technically a part 2. The first part of this theory went up on Cryonite's channel, and you should watch that as well so you can get the full context of what I'm going to say. With that out of the way, let's pick up where Cryo left off. Following the events of the Pizza Sim Fire and Happiest Day, William Afton finds himself in Ultimate Custom Night, a never-ending torture simulator where he's forced to face his sins again and again and again. We all know what UCN is, and we all agree on when it starts, which just leaves one question. When does it end? Well, that's the thing. It didn't. Up to the most recent point in the timeline, that being Ruin, UCN is still happening. How do I know this? Well, to explain that, let's talk about the Pizza Sim Fire. The plan there was pretty simple. Henry wanted to get all of the remnants and agony into one place, so that he could burn all of them at once, together. And on the surface, it looked like his plan worked. All of the animatronics, including William Afton himself, were caught up in the flames and all burned together. Except, it didn't go exactly as planned. Henry's fire didn't burn everything away, which is evident by the fact that UCN happened in the first place. But he succeeded in bringing all of the remnant and agony together, and in doing so, he inadvertently created something new, something dangerous, and something that we've all known about for years, but never had a good answer for. The Blob. Or if you're objectively wrong, the Tangle, but that name sucks, so I'm not going to call it that. The Blob is a mess of animatronic masks and wiring that we see in Security Breach and Ruin, and we really don't get told anything about it. It stalks the shadows and rarely interacts with anything, only attacking Gregory if he literally steps outside of Freddy and tries walking up to it, which makes it feel like more of a defense mechanism than anything else. I think that the Blob is, well, literally exactly what it looks like. A mess of masks and wires. Or, more specifically, a culmination of all the remnants and agony that didn't burn away in the Pizza Sim Fire. And following the logic that UCN is literally made up of everyone's agony controlled by Cassidy, it's more than likely that she's the one controlling this thing, and that it's the physical embodiment of what's going on in UCN. Steel Wool has been trying to tell us about this for quite a while, and I think they even tried to hint at it during Help Wanted 2. Throughout that game, you can collect 6 Phasforce figures, which are essentially just FNaF Transformers. And, when you collect them all, you see that they can all combine into one form, the Phasbototron. This is a direct example of all the animatronics combining into one form, which is exactly what I think the Blob is. On that note, do you remember what happens when you put Phasbototron together? You see Glitchtrap's hand for just a moment and then get absolutely jumped by 5 Nightmare Staff bots. Keep this in mind for later, we're gonna talk about it again in a little bit. Back on the topic of Security Breach and Ruin, we actually have even more evidence of the Blob being controlled by Cassidy, the burn trap ending from Security Breach. Now, I know that some of you look at this ending and tilt your head because technically, it's not canon. However, considering the fact that we see Gregory draw this in Ruin, it's logical to assume that this happened to some extent, meaning that in a way, Burn Trap, in the way that he was presented, is real. So what actually is it? Well, most people will tell you that it's now meant to just be the mimic, and for the most part they're correct, but there's a small extra step there. Just like the Blob, Burn Trap is also a culmination, specifically a culmination of the Mimic and William Afton. Or rather, whatever was left of him after the pizza sim fire. This is a pretty complicated process, so let's take it from the top. In Help Wanted, we learn that Fazbear Entertainment is cutting a lot of corners to make game development both easier and cheaper. This leads to them reusing a lot of old data and circuit boards, which actually includes the Mimic 1 AI. When Mimic 1 turns on, it immediately does what it was programmed to do from the start: learn. It starts learning from everything else that Fazbear Entertainment was reusing, including all of the information about William Afton. This results in Glitch Trap, which is Mimic 1 after learning from Afton, beginning to mimic his appearance and personality, and potentially even being infected with some of his agony if they used materials from the Pizza Sim location. At this point, Glitch Trap wanted a body. Not just any body, but a body that reflected its new self. A new form of Afton. This ultimately led to Glitch Trap mind-controlling Vanessa and turning her into Vanny, which I'm not going over in this video. Once Vanny was created, Glitch Trap gave her a simple task: build a body. A body that would properly reflect who Glitch Trap was. This led to Vanny going down into what was left of the Pizza Sim building and gathering whatever was left of Afton's body and attaching it to the Mimic endoskeleton. The agony infused into the new form, and as a result of this, we got Burn Trap. The combination of the Mimic endoskeleton and William Afton's remaining agony. The agony that was stuck onto the endoskeleton was enough to literally regrow flesh. Or at least try to. It's incredibly deformed and only vaguely looks like an actual human, but you could tell it was attempted. Not only would this explain why Burn Trap looks the way he does, but also why the Mimic is still around in Ruin. Think about it, if Gregory's drawing from Ruin is something that actually happened, then the Mimic shouldn't still be around. I mean, the Blob cobbed that guy, he should literally be bones right now. But for some reason, he's not. He's still kicking, and he's not going anywhere anytime soon. How? Well, that's pretty easily explained if Cassidy is the one controlling the Blob. Cassidy doesn't know what the Mimic is, and by proxy, doesn't care about it. Her priority currently is, and always will be, the continual torment of William Afton. So when the Blob grabbed onto Burn Trap, everything related to Afton was essentially absorbed from it, and everything that was left, that being the Mimic, was spit right back out, free to go do whatever it wanted. So she's controlling the Blob, at least in Security Breach, but by the time we get to Ruin, something is different. You see, between these two games, something happens to the Blob. Something that changes how it acts. In Security Breach, it had smooth and controlled movements, but when we see it in Ruin, it's a lot jerkier and less refined. Almost as if she's losing control. To explain why that is, I'm gonna bring Cryo on to tell you what's been going on with Cassidy in the years since we last saw her.
Cassidy's presumably had this thing for years now, and this is the only time we've seen anything suggesting the idea that she might be losing the control that she's had. Something has to be different. Something has to be causing this sudden change, and I think that there's a pretty simple answer for that. Someone is fighting back. Someone is rising against her, pushing back against this control that she still has. But who? Who could be pushing back against her? It's definitely not William. We saw how that ended with Burn Trap. Cassidy can handle him. No problem. No, it's someone else. Someone who's hinted at going against Cassidy before, and someone who doesn't want her in control anymore. Charlie. And believe it or not, we have evidence for this. In fact, there's evidence for this scattered all over the Pizzaplex, all of the puppet and Nightmarion imagery. Between the Nightmarion staff bots, the Nightmarion plushes, and the black and white striped wiring we can see throughout Security Breach, it's safe to say that Charlie still has some form of influence at this point in the timeline. Enough influence for it to be actively visible in the Pizzaplex for anyone to see. I believe that Charlie is still fighting against Cassidy to this very day, trying to regain control of herself, and trying to free the spirits of all of the lost children that are still trapped within the blob. And in fact, I think that we can see evidence of Charlie succeeding in doing exactly that, and it's scattered throughout the only other part of Security Breach that none of us have ever been able to solve, the sticky note room. But gods have mercy, I am not talking about that. Kate, please save me.
When people first saw the sticky note room, I think the entire community had one collective headache because just look at it. It's the single most daunting area in any FNaF game. There's so much happening in it that most people don't even know where to begin. But I think I have an answer now. An answer to what's happening in this room and how it correlates to everything else going on in here. If you pay attention to the sticky notes in the room, you'll notice a rather interesting pattern. There are 3 distinct writing implements in this room. There's a thick textured one, a thin textured one, and one in the middle that isn't textured, but is instead very smooth. You'll also notice a lot of groups of 3 in the room, including pictures with 3 faces on them. On quite a few of them, one of these faces looks eerily similar to the puppet. Now, considering the importance of the number 3 to this room, it feels safe to say that there are 3 different people writing on these sticky notes, all represented by the way that their writing is implemented. The most obvious of the 3 is the thick textured one that looks slightly faded, who I fully believe to be Charlie. This person draws the puppet alongside 2 other people numerous times, which to me feels like a drawing of herself along with the 2 other people in the room. Next up, the thin textured drawings. Considering this person draws a bear and a lot of birthday imagery, as well as a lot of allusions to their friends, it feels like this one is obviously meant to be the crying child. Everything drawn here relates back to him rather easily. The last one, however, is where things start to get tricky. They have thicker, untextured text, and a lot of the things that they draw don't seem to correlate to anyone in particular. However, one of their drawings is a house with an arrow pointing down underneath it. This immediately makes me think of the sister location bunker being underneath the Afton house. Pair this with the words ice cream being written, and it feels like this is meant to be Elizabeth. This is further backed up by this character just writing the sky, something that Elizabeth lost her access to entirely after being trapped inside of Circus Baby and sent to an underground bunker. Factoring all of these things together, I think we can come to a conclusion. Charlie is slowly pulling people out of the blob and bringing them here, and the first 2 that she got were the crying child and Elizabeth, the 2 Afton children that were dragged into the blob against their will and forced to help in the torment of their father. Further on this point, I think that this could be the reason that there's a table of staff bots that resemble the Aftons. Charlie is trying to remind the 2 of them about their family. This also implies that Charlie showed Cece a robot that was missing a head and went, "Look, this is you," which means that she's a total dick, but that's besides the point. I think that Charlie took these spirits from the blob and brought them to some of the staff bots and had them possess those. This is how they regained their memories and interacted with physical objects, until they could remember who they are. This brings me back to the Phase Force ending of Help Wanted 2, where after reassembling Phase Bototron, you're attacked by Nightmare staff bots. I think that this is a reference toward the fact that Charlie is having the people she frees from the blob possess the Nightmare staff bots, so that Cassidy can't just nab them again. I think that this is going to keep happening too. Charlie is going to keep slowly freeing souls from inside of the blob until Cassidy eventually doesn't have enough strength to keep control over it. And once that happens, I think that will signal the end of UCN. The revenge-driven nightmare that Cassidy started after the flames of Pizza Sim will finally come to an end once Charlie frees all of the people who were caught up in it. Before ending the video, there are a few miscellaneous points that I couldn't get to flow properly with everything else that I said. However, I think that these are all still important to bring up, so I want to run through a few of them really quick. First of all, the poppets that you collect throughout Help Wanted 2. All of these poppets have something in common with each other. They each have a tag lock. For a brief explanation, a tag lock is something that connects the doll to a specific person or entity. And on all of these poppets, we have an animatronic mask, obviously referencing the spirits inside of each animatronic. Now, tag-locked poppets are often used to have control over the person that they're tag-locked to. And in this case, this would be another point of evidence in favor of Cassidy having control over all of the spirits that were present for Happiest Day. Speaking of Help Wanted 2, let's talk about Princess Quest 4. In Princess Quest 4, you find yourself 4 layers deep by the end of it. The first layer is the Vanny Mask, then the arcade machine, then the arcade machine in the arcade machine, and finally, this broken, descending path downward. Once you're at the bottom layer, you run into the Red King, who's referred to as OMC in the files. This directly mirrors FNaF World, and circles back to the importance of FNaF World that was highlighted in Cryo's video. Now, let's talk about how Princess Quest 4 ends, and what it means. Just like Happiest Day, I think Cassidy is responsible for the creation of Princess Quest 4, and I think that the goal of it was simple: to grab the little bit of Afton that was still trapped in your mind, represented by Glitchtrap being taken from you and crushed into dust at the end of the game. With that said, I want to say thank you to my channel members, Ballsfrog, Embrisk, Kepi, Crashmaster, and Sunny Koi. I'll see you guys in the next one, and
have a fazerific day!